Hey guys, Zara here with the Simple as a New Smart podcast and Minimalist Homeschooling. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a homeschooling mother of 4 who also owns businesses with her husband, and we've been homeschooling since the beginning, and I like to take this platform to talk about how doing less really is more. And today I'm talking about purging with new questions, because we all know that homeschoolers cannot ask whether or not something sparks joy. Everything sparks joy for homeschoolers. That's how we got into the mess of having too much to begin with, right? So that's not really a great question for us, because we can say that all of it is so exciting, all of it is valuable, all of it is worthwhile. And really, when it comes to homeschooling especially, but I'd say for all of life, because so much of life brings us joy, and so many things that we want to bring into our home bring us joy, and so many things that we want to bring into our schedule bring us joy. I'd say that there are a lot better questions that we can ask. So first of all, I am podcasting today on both YouTube and on whatever your favorite audio podcast platform is. So for those of you who want to see this in person, you can go to the Zara PhD YouTube channel. If you prefer audio, I am, like I said, on the Simple as the New Smart podcast on almost every platform. So choose your favorite and I will see you there. So first of all, if you are on YouTube, if you are watching the video stream of this, you can tell that I am practicing what I preach as far as not being paralyzed by perfection. So I'm sitting in my car, I have a few minutes, I have my notes, I know what I want to say, and it is more important to me to just get it out there and get it done and do it than it is for me to do my hair, to have a designer background. If you notice in a lot of my videos, I always have a different background. It's, whatever works right now. I like to say, I do whatever works parenting, right? So I know you're not here to see how I did my makeup today or whether or not I curled my hair today. So with that in mind, welcome to my vehicle, because this is where I have time to do this today. And I'm saying this just to point out that, I don't have it all together, but here we are. We're all in this together, and I wanted to give you my perspective on how I purge things. So, number 1, the mindset of minimalism and minimalist homeschooling is that we prune in order to bear more fruit. So it's important that we approach this not saying, oh, I should do this, I'm so terrible because I hoard all this stuff and all the guilt, I've wasted all the money, I'm wasting time, I'm wasting space. And then we have the guilt on the other side of, I should have done all this with my child, and look at all this stuff I haven't done yet, and I'm such a terrible homeschooler because I have, other homeschoolers are doing X, Y, and Z, and I bought the curriculum, but I just haven't implemented it, and so I'm going to feel terrible about the fact that I have this stuff that I haven't used for all these different reasons, right? But really, what our goal here is not to beat ourselves up about everything we've done wrong, everything we should be doing. I don't even like the word should. I think that imposes external values on your own value system. And nobody needs that. We are going to do a lot better, and we're going to thrive a lot more when we look internally at our own value systems. So, we first of all have to get away from the negative mindset of, look how bad I let it get, I'm just not good at blank, 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 whatever negative self-talk you have going on, and change it into, this is really a positive process. And so the positive here is that we are going to prune in order to bear more fruit. The goal is to thrive. The goal is not scarcity. The goal is not shaming ourselves. The goal is not a race to see who can have the fewest number of books on their shelves. The goal here is to thrive, and we do that by diverting our resources, our energy, our money, our time into the most valuable things so that those can flourish. And we're pruning back the distractions. We're pruning back the things that don't serve us. And so this really is a positive process. This isn't an obligation based on other people's opinions or other people's values or other people's advice, right? This is truly to get to our own core values. So the number one question I would say then is, Who do I want to be? Who do I want my family to be? Who do I want my children to be? What are our core values? And in the show notes, I'll drop some references to other episodes if you're interested in learning more about establishing core values and choosing subjects and things like that. But for today, that's the question you need to be asking. Who do I want to be? And for the purposes of homeschooling, it's what kind of homeschool do we want to have? What kind of homeschool teacher do I want to be? What kind of students and learners do I want my children to be? And how does this serve us? How is homeschooling serving us, right? What are our big overarching goals for homeschooling, right? I want to raise lifetime learners. I want to raise children who can sit down and just devour a book because they love it so much, right? These are very different goals from I want to make sure that I check off all the boxes on the curriculum I just bought, right? Because the curriculum is the tool, and we have much bigger dreams for who we want to be, our character, right? And those are our core values. So what kind of person do we want to be as a teacher? What kind of person do we want our student to be, right? And so when we ask that question, then it becomes a lot easier. And we ask that question first, then it becomes a lot easier to think about, is this helping us be that person? And then the next two questions that I have fall right into line with that, right? So first we establish a positive mindset. Next we ask, who do we want to be? And what are we trying to do here, right? And you can apply this to your space too. What is this space really supposed to be doing? What is the purpose, right? What is the value of this space? What is the value of my day? You can use this for your schedule also. What is the purpose of my day? What is the purpose of my time? And ultimately, our time and our space support who we want to be. Those are additional resources that should be supporting. I'm sorry, I used the word should. No. Those are resources available to support who we want to be. And they provide an opportunity for us to really dial in on that whole idea of pruning and being intentional so that we can thrive and flourish and our children can flourish, right? So all of this serves our unique purpose, right? And so because of that, our space has a purpose, our time has a purpose, and the materials we bring into our homeschool very well must have a purpose, right? And so the next part of the same question is that we're focusing on what we want and why, not focusing on your own perceived flaws, not focusing on what other people are doing or say you should be doing, right? And so your goal here, your why, has to be to create a fulfilling and meaningful life or homeschool or space or days that is functional, right? It's not just an image. It's not just an ideal. We're actually going to make it happen. And the goal is not purging. That's our tool, right? So with that said, then we move on to question number 2, which is then you look at each item, whether it's an item, again, on your calendar, in your closet, in your homeschool, and you say, how is this serving me? And even more than that, do I feel like this is life-giving or life-sapping? That's a really important question to me. Do I feel like this is giving me, our space, our days, energy and vitality? Is it helping us be who we want to be? Is it helping us be at our best? Is it building toward a life we want to live? Or conversely, is it sapping my energy? The sun just came out. Is it sapping our energy? Is it distracting us from the path we want to take? Is it not serving us, basically? When I look at this item, and I think this is where the does it spark joy comes in a little bit, but you have to refine it, right? You have to say, does it feel like it's giving me energy? Or does it feel like it's distracting me? Does it just feel like too much, right? Too much for my kids. Do my kids feel like it's too much? So it doesn't have to be a negative even. It can be a neutral item that, yeah, it's good, it's okay, but it's still a distraction. Does that make sense? So it may not push us backwards per se, but if it's also not helping us move forward, then is it something that we really want to devote our time to? Or could we remove that and replace it with something more valuable, right? So we want to always sort of be making progress towards who we want to be and what we want to be doing as that person, right? And so we can now look at everything in that perspective. Is it life-giving or is it life-sapping? Is it helping me? Is it serving me? Or is it distracting me? Right? And then the third question is, and of course, I get back to my faith, guys. If you're a Christian, I'm Catholic, our goal is to eternal life and to the kingdom of God. And so if you can also put that on top of it, is this helping us get to that end goal? Or is it just a mere distraction? And a lot of times we will distract ourselves with busy work because the hard work is hard, right? And our kids will do it too. They'll beg for the worksheets. They'll beg for all the simple stuff. And I'm not saying it's a negative to do those some days, but sometimes they'll do it to procrastinate from doing the hard stuff, right? We all do it. And so some of these questions should be hard. I'm not saying it's easy to purge. This is the hard part. It is hard to prune. It is hard to cut things out. It is hard to do the hard things instead of the easy thing, right? And a lot of times we end up with the mess because that's the easy thing. I know my children's bedroom is a mess because that's the easy thing, right? And so it gets back to who do we want to be and how do we want our space to serve us? So the third question I have is one that helps if you're on the fence, right? What if I didn't have this? What am I afraid I would lose? Or what am I thinking I'm going to lose or that we're going to miss if I don't have this, right? And again, this goes with things on our schedules. What are we going to miss if we don't sign up for homeschool roller skating classes? What are we going to miss if we don't sign up for the English composition class, right? And so FOMO, the fear of missing out, can be a very vague feeling. It's just it can be like a static level of anxiety, especially in homeschoolers, where we just have this constant fear that we might miss something. And so don't stick in that vague sense of anxiety. You have to name it and you have to be specific and be very specific about your fear. Because then once you name it, once you say it out loud, then you can say for that loss, right? Whatever you're thinking that loss will be, is it worth the cost? Because everything has a cost. And we're weighing now the value of something, right? Is it worth the cost of time, the cost of space, the cost of energy, the cost of our mental load, and that guilt I started out with saying, like the guilt of not doing it? Is it worth keeping it on the shelf and feeling that guilt and that shame just so that you can keep it? Is it worth the expectation, right? Because expectations increase our mental load and they also increase our sense of failure, right? A lot of times when we're disappointed with the way things are going, it's not because our homeschool is wrong or bad. It's because we had the wrong expectations, right? It's because it's not meeting our expectations. That's what disappointment is. Disappointment is simply that something didn't meet our expectations. And so when you start looking at what am I afraid I'm going to miss out on? What do I think we're going to lose? And is that worth the cost? Versus what will I gain if I let go? Will I gain time? Will I gain relief if I just am willing to let go? And if I'm willing to forgive myself, if I'm willing to forgive myself for spending the money, if I'm willing to forgive myself for not doing this with my kids, am I willing to forgive myself for having these expectations that I didn't meet? And that's a big one, because I think we have to accept that as homeschoolers, we're learning as we go too. And so we have to allow ourselves to make some mistakes, to say, I thought in my mind this was going to go a lot differently, but that's not the way it's working out. And so I'm going to adapt and I'm going to adjust. And that doesn't make mean that I was a big failure. It means I'm learning, right? And so we kind of treat ourselves with the same consideration that we treat our children, right? And so, donating something is kind of our consolation prize, right? It's this idea that God uses all things for good. Even the mistake I made on the curriculum I bought, He can use that for good, right? And so my bad choice might mean something good for someone else who really needs it. And so I don't need to control that. I don't need to control what happens to this curriculum next. I can donate it, and I can trust that someone else, it's going to end up with someone else who it can serve far better than it's serving me or my family. So holding on to something that I'm not using does not make it a better choice. It doesn't mean it was a good decision to buy that thing just because I'm willing to keep it on my shelf. It doesn't mean that I didn't spend the money on it. It doesn't make the thing more valuable simply by sitting in our space. That's not what gives it value, right? And so that doesn't give my decision value either. And so when we put all of these 3 questions together, when we start from a mindset of like, okay, I want to thrive, right? I really want to get intentional about who we are and how we learn and how our days look and the meaning and how fulfilling it is, how purposeful we are, how intentional we are. So I need to see what's holding me back, right? So number 1, who are we? Number 2, is it serving me? Is it life-giving? Is it life-sapping? Is it moving me forward? Is it moving my children forward? Is it guiding us to eternal life? And then number 3, that vague anxiety of, I can't let go because we might need it, we might miss it. And getting really clear then on what exactly are you afraid you're going to miss? And then what would you do if you realized in the future that you did want that thing again, right? Because this is about a want, not a should. If you decided in the future, we do want that to help us be who we are meant to be, then what would you do? And chances are you have a solution, and it's not too terribly painful. I don't like wasting money any more than the next person. I am a pretty frugal person at heart. It makes me kind of sick to my stomach to spend money, if I'm being honest. And so, it's painful to me to have to say, you know what, I'm going to donate this now and trust that if we really want it in the future, I can buy it again. Because at the end of the day, I don't live in a world of scarcity, right? And if it is that valuable, one of our core values is education. And so my husband and I have already decided that's how our money serves us. Our money serves us by being used on education, and again, not frivolously, but that's a good expense, right? And so that's what I have today. 3 basic questions, but they are so not basic because they go really deep. And once you get used to using these questions, you start applying them to everything. I highly recommend applying them to homeschooling things first because it's easier to be objective about that. But then you can apply it to your schedule, you can apply it to your closets. Really start wherever it's easiest for you, because once it becomes a habit, it really can be life-changing and super, super helpful. And I know that these are the questions that help me the most on a near daily basis. So with that, I am wishing you all the simple things. Make sure you're following Zara PhD on Instagram. You can come find our Facebook group, which is Minimalist Homeschooling with Zara PhD. And with that, I'm wishing you all the simple things. Bye, guys.